guys, how's it going? It's the Fuzz. So this video is kind of a response to the post I made entitled "Some Silly Idea from a Guy in a Hat About Masters," and that had to do with a link in the description, by the way. That had to do with introducing kind of a banning list, a miniature ban list to Masters to force players to rethink their decks a little bit just by hitting like one specific card in each aspect. And it got a surprisingly positive reaction. Even Crip liked the idea, and it got me thinking, you know what? I'm going to take it one step further, and I'm going to issue the Fuzzybolt Master Challenge, which I will be issuing to various players. And how it's going to work is it's going to be that banning idea, but it's also going to be picking our hero. So here's how the challenge would work. Let's say I challenge Boltor, right? And I'm gonna pick a hero. That's gonna be one of the 3 heroes I run for the 3 decks. It's gonna be kind of Conquest style, but not exactly. Then he picks 2 of his 3. You know, I get the first pick, then he gets 2. Then I pick my last 2, then he picks his last. So each have 3 heroes. No aspect repeats. You have to pick a hero from each different aspect if you want to do it. Once every player has 3 heroes, then we do the banning. Each player bans 1 card from each aspect, and we go one at a time. So let's say I go, okay, I'm going to go into order, and I'm going to ban Spellwarden. And then Boltor picks his card from order. Then he picks the next aspect and the next card to ban. And so on and so forth until we got all 12. We each got our heroes, and then we make the 3 decks. Now, because we are choosing specific heroes of different aspect, I don't think it's necessary to have the restriction of 4 cards total between your decks, the Conquest style. Yeah, and also because in this challenge, there will be no deck banning. All 3 of your decks will see play. It'll be 3-on-3, probably like last man standing style. Like your deck, if your deck wins, it survives, or you can switch it out. And then once your deck loses, it's eliminated. And then last deck standing wins. So this is what I'm going to be doing for the next, I don't know how long. It's just some way to amuse myself. And I think it'd be very interesting to experience this kind of a different meta where you can no longer rely on the same decks over and over again because you just taken out the key cards which these decks use. And I think it'll be an interesting experience as well to see, okay, well, how does this aspect do without this 1 card? If we suddenly realize, oh man, this aspect kind of sucks without it, well, I think we just found the problem in the game. And I think we can maybe use that as a guideline for how to make further future balance changes. So what I have in front of me is a list of cards. Basically, we're going to go over each aspect, and I'm going to tell you what I think is the single most impactful card you could hit to shake things up in that aspect. You ready? All right. So order, I also have several selections. The other ones are kind of like honorable mentions. For order, I think the most impactful hit would be Word of Grace. And this is because Word of Grace is the card that decks like Angels and 1 turn heal, well, if it was still played, completely relied on. Now, Angels don't rely on it, but it's a big card for them because it enables like a separate win condition. And sometimes you just stock up like 3 of these. You wait till you have like 5 aspects, and then you just play all 3 and gain 30 life and run away with the game. And what exactly is your opponent supposed to do? Without it, though, I think Angels might still be playable, but it'd be different. Now, if you think Word of Grace is not that impactful, honestly, there isn't a card in order that I think even needs to be touched. But Word of Grace would take away a lot of that 40 life win con annoyance, because Word of Grace is one of the easiest ways to get there. The only other way really is like Vampirism, right? But with Vampirism, you do have to have a board and attack with it, at least. Something like that. Or a bunch of lambs, who cares? Other honorable mentions include Cavalry Field Captain, because it's just such a strong 3-drop. But I don't know, I have mixed feelings. I think he's a little bit too good, but it's not like a big emergency thing or anything, but it's something you could hit if you don't want to have to deal with it. Spellwarden, if you don't want to have to worry about it, but I don't think you really have to. I think Spellwarden is only really played because it's the only way you can protect yourself from Cataclysm, and yeah, that's really it. Because once Cataclysm is out of the way, and assuming they doesn't get like assassinated or something, yeah, you can do your thing. But with that not being a problem, I don't think Spell Warden is as annoying, but it's something I might consider hitting. And I put it in Still because it's one of the more powerful cards in Order. It's one of the main reasons to splash it, really. But again, I'm not actually saying that I think Instill is too powerful or anything. I'm just saying if I was hitting cards, let's say Boltor hits Word of Grace, I would choose one of these three probably. Moving on to Wisdom, I think the single biggest impactful card in Wisdom is New Horizons. This is the card that all the control decks use to ramp up. To Cataclysm usually. But also Casual Dares also uses it to ramp up to get, you know, the ridiculous drain effect. One Turn Heal used it to get ridiculous Word of Grace. I think once you take that away, you basically almost eliminate the ramping aspect completely, and decks are just not able to skip those steps. There's no more Library Guards on turn 3, no more Mutants on turn 3, no more, you know, all that shenanigans. So that would be my pick if I was going to pick something. For the other cards, I added Gnome Power Engineer because it's one of the only really good artifact removal. So if you hit that on purpose, you might think, okay, well now I can, you know, make a Reflector deck because my opponent has probably no artifact removal, right? Other cards, Library Guards because it's just so good, and Lamp if you don't want to deal with it. But honestly, I don't think you have to hit, if you want to kill Vamp Lamp, I don't think you even have to hit Lamp, honestly. For Nature, I only have 3 cards because I just couldn't think of any Nature card that's really a big problem. It would have been Landslide, but Landslide was already taken care of. So I've got Outbreak, I guess, although I feel like if you hit Outbreak, like there's just no reason to run Nature at all. I guess except for Reverence. That's basically it. That's really the best card in Nature is Advanced Neva. Otherwise, you've got Unicorn. Again, if you want to play spells, spell heavy, and you know Unicorn is one of the best ways to deal with spells. You just take out Unicorn. Maybe not. I don't know. And then Nienna, maybe if you're worried about elves. I don't know. Again, I couldn't really think of anything better. Rage. Now, Rage is probably the most interesting of the bunch because it's not as easy to pinpoint a single card that's responsible for like Rage aggro being efficient the way it is. But I have pinpointed, I think, the one card that would make the biggest impact, and that is Word of Fire, which is possibly their best card overall because it's removal that draws you another card. That's insane, especially if you have 2 aspects, 3 aspects, it gets insane. You take this away, and suddenly their spell selection is starting to look a lot more garbage. In fact, the reason I chose this and not Burning Rage is because I think without Word of Fire, Burning Rage gets a lot worse. Because you really don't have any other cheap spells. I guess you have Blood Frenzy to use with it, and it's just a lot less good overall. But Burning Rage is a reasonable pick if you want to hit something else. If your opponent already hit Word of Fire, you might want to hit Burning Rage. The other one I've got is Flame Serpent. I think hitting this will hurt more than hitting Dragonfire because this says cheaper than Dragonfire and has the ability to split the damage. You play this guy, you hit a creature, and then the rest damage goes to face. So, yeah, I think without Flame Serpent and without Word of Fire, for instance, Rage aggro would lose a lot of punch, but maybe they'd still find some other way to kill you. They're like that. Dominion. Man, that's an easy one. Cataclysm. No question. I mean, this is basically the poster child for this entire idea. What would the meta look like without Cataclysm? Well, there'd still be a lot of aggro, but mid-range decks might be able to arise because mid-range decks just die to this card. Like, I try to build a board Cataclysm. Nothing you can do. Without Cataclysm, it's different. And honestly, I don't think it's even unreasonable to simply remove this card from the game because it's not like Dominion is lacking removal, right? They have like a metric ton of removal available. They've got Devious Plots, Karthus, Prinha, Helm, freaking Soul Flames, Mutants. They even have a hero power that acts as removal. You don't need more. So it's so weird that that is the aspect that has Cataclysm. So yeah, I think you could just remove this card and it'd be fine. Might even make the game better because decks like Vamp Lamp might have to redesign themselves. Now, hitting this will not kill Vamp Lamp necessarily, but it will force them to play differently. Like, they're gonna have to cut the ramp because what are you ramping to? If not Cataclysm, then nothing, because if you're spending your first few turns ramping, you're gonna get the shit kicked out of you by their early game and mid game. There's no more get out of jail free button like Cataclysm. So I think what would happen is you just cut like Horizons and Power Surge and play, I don't know, Assassins or Vampiric Touches or Protectors, whatever. Some other cards to defend against early game. But I think that's fine. Like, you could still play Vampires, and you could still play Lamps. Just play less of them and rely on them a little less. Use your creatures as well. I think that's perfectly fine. In fact, I used to run a deck like that, and it did fine. It's just that version never caught on because it wasn't as, shall we say, focused as the current version where you just ramp, you got Cataclysm and all that other bullshit. Whereas my version was a bit worse against it because if I got Cataclysm, I had less Lamps and less Vampirism to work with in my opponent, so I was at a bit of a disadvantage overall. And I wasn't necessarily at an advantage by having the mid-game. Although sometimes I would win games by just playing Vampirism on curve. So yeah, I think it's fine. Other cards, you could hit Vampirism. If you want to shut down Vamp Lamp, this is how. Without Vampirism, Lamp, I don't think it even does anything anymore because you can't heal with it. If you can't heal, yeah, you're not going to want to use it. So, and Scatter's Bidding is the last card. It's pretty obnoxious late game threat. And especially if your opponent is cute enough to hit Unicorn, yeah, you see what's gonna happen, right? If he hits Unicorn, you better be hitting Scatter's Bidding to make sure you don't lose to some bullshit like that. And lastly, Corruption. Corruption is weird because there's a variety of cards you can hit to hurt different decks, but I think overwhelmingly, the card that would have the biggest impact is unquestionably Consume Spirit, which is possibly just their best card, because if you're running Mana Corruption, this card is absolutely ridiculous. It's like a Word of Fire, basically. It doesn't draw a card, but it gives you a big buff instead. And if you play Zombie Legionnaire into Abhorrent Ghoul and to consume their 2-drop and then consume their 3-drop, you're gonna win the game very soon. Anyways, I think if you hit this, like, Demons suffer, Casual Darius suffers, Mono Zombie suffers, any version of Corruption is gonna suffer. Most of them are gonna suffer. Well, I guess Hate Bears won't, because Hate Bears only splash Corruption, so they don't even run Consume. But any other deck, it'll hurt. Other picks, I've got Dark Portal. If you just don't want to deal with demons, then you just hit Dark Portal and there's no more demons. Or I guess you could hit Succubus, but I think Portal is the one you want to hit. Flesh Sculptor, I guess if you hate this card. Harpy, I'm sure it looks like a juicy target, but I honestly don't think it's worth hitting, really. And Tombs of the Damned, I guess, if you don't want to worry about late game zombie shenanigans, but again, I would personally hit Consume. Just to see if Corruption can play a different game. They might have to, like, just splash another color for card draw, because without Consume, they have a lot less incentive to go mono. In fact, almost no incentive at all, other than playing Restless Tombs on curve, or Tombs of the Damned on curve, but it's not even that big of a deal. So, yeah. So, anyways, those are my picks. Consume Spirit. Word of Fire. Honestly, I don't even have a pick for Nature. Yeah. New Horizons and Word of Grace. So let me know what you would pick. What other cards did I not mention that you would hit if you were challenged by the to the ultimate Master Fuzzybolt challenge? What cards would you hit? What heroes would you pick? And just what decks would you run? Like, how would you handle having to kind of retool your decks a little bit? Are there any strategies you might go for? I think it's interesting to find out. I'm looking forward trying something new. So what I'm going to be doing for the next probably a few weeks is challenging people. I'm probably just going to start like at the top of the ladder or whatever. And then I'm going to make videos of the highlights of the games, kind of like what I think. And hey, if I challenge somebody like Peacekeeper, they might stream it. Win-win, right? You get a lot of entertainment there. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time. I'll try to get a challenge up as soon as possible. See you next time.